What's going on, guys? I'm a regular guy with the Regular Guy Firearms channel. Thanks for watching. Well, the move to Tennessee is complete, and with that being said, so is the regular development schedule for the YouTube videos and whatnot. Now, that being said, you guys already know what this is meant to be. This is supposed to be for the new MOLOT VEPRs. Now, these guys were imported from the MOLOT factory in Russia, so that makes these Russian guns. Yay! Quite obviously. Now, for a while, it's been a well-known and established fact that the VEPR line of guns have been pretty superb quality rifles. The only thing that kind of sucked about a VEPR is that you pretty much had to convert yourself, which meant that you did the personal fitting and replacement of all the furniture and did everything that you needed to do, bullet guides, all that stuff. But now these guys are being imported. Okay, these are basically fully converted from the start. Now, essentially, what this is it is a short RPK, and we will go over basically from front to rear and what comes with the gun, what makes it essentially a short RPK, and all that other jazz. And with that being said, we're going to get right on into it. Now, first and foremost, we're looking at the front end of the gun here. Now, the PWS, the second-gen PWS FSC 47 does not come with these. It comes with a standard thread protector, but as you can see, it takes standard AK muzzle devices, and they attach in the same way. Your front sight post is elevation and windage adjustable, similar to most AK types. The only difference being is that your front and rear sight are actually RPK-style sights. Now, the difference between RPK-style sights and regular AKM sights is that these guys are actually quite a bit finer. The front sight post in particular is a bit thinner than a regular AKM front sight, which just makes target obscurity really not a thing. They're still used like regular pistol sights essentially, but it's just easier to just have less of your target obscured by the front sight post, which is fantastic. AK-esque guys will notice a couple of things immediately, and the first being that the barrel on this guy is actually really stout, especially once you pass the gas block here. Now, the reason why it's as stout as it is that it is basically an RPK profile. For those of you that don't know, the RPK is essentially a beefed-up version of the regular AKM that was designed to be a squad support or squad automatic weapon. Now, what's kind of neat about having a thicker profile barrel up front is that shifts of point of impact, or basically the group sizes, take longer to open up once you start shooting a little bit more with these guys. The only con to that being two things, and that would be weight. And once heat builds up here, it actually takes longer for it to dissipate than it would on a standard barrel profile on an AK. Twist rate is standard com block twist rate, which is just fine. So like your 123 grain bullets and whatnot out of your 30 caliber AKs are going to run just fine through it. Now, as far as accuracy is concerned, I'm actually really happy to report that I shot a lot of groups through this gun. The very, very best group that I was able to shoot was, a fraction of an inch smaller than a 1-inch group at 100. Now, that is the very best group. I got that shot group exactly once, so that's not what the norm is. What you're expecting as far as a norm out of accuracy from this particular barrel and rifle altogether is honestly something like 1.5 to 2 inches, depending on you as the individual and what it is that you're capable of. But I was getting repeated 1.5 groups at 100 yards. So honestly, it's accurate. It's really accurate. So there's that. The handguards that come with this thing, in all honesty, I don't really think I'm going to mess with. If anything, I might put an Ultimac on this guy. But I really do dig these in particular because Unlike the K-Var furniture that you see on Arsenal rifles and stuff like that, these guys are actually a little beefed up too. And I personally like the basically the texturing, I guess you can say, when really it's just more like cut grooves. But the handguards themselves are beefed up. There's good heat shielding in them. And this just kind of pokes your hands out a little bit farther from the rifle, so that definitely works. As you can expect from a standard AK-style rifle, out of the box, this guy is incredibly difficult to basically undo so that you can get your gas block off. I'm sorry, your gas tube off. But that's nothing that your carrier or bolt carrier group can't fix as far as being able to rip that guy off. Next thing, we're looking at the rear sight here, and the rear sight, as I said before, is an RPK style rear. Now, it is windage adjustable, not elevation, so my personal preference is to have, windage adjustability here, and then up front we will go ahead and do the elevation adjustments, mostly because this is a little bit easier to do than up here. And there's actually something else that's kind of neat about this rifle, and what it comes with, and we'll go over that here in a second. Now, you'll notice, AK guys, or dudes that are getting into the AK game, that the receiver looks a little bit different. Now, this is still a stamped receiver, however, it is thicker than normal. It's like 1.5 millimeters versus 1 millimeter, which basically means that the receiver itself is a little bit more stout. And obviously the cuts here and the riveting pattern is different from a standard AKM, and that's really just to reinforce it in the right places, basically to handle sustained fire, which is what the RPK was meant for. Remember, this is still a short RPK, essentially, in semi-auto format. Now, the triggers that come with these guys are Arsenal-esque triggers, and we'll go over those a little bit more in a second. Standard AK style safety, which out of box they are a bit stout. If you want to loosen them up, essentially you're going to have to pull the lever out a little bit. Watch where you pull it. You don't really want to pull, take the lever off and just pull from this end, because you'll bend it. Try and pull the whole thing and then do some filing on the inside of the lever itself, and you should be good. With that being said, no AK magazine issues. It takes everything AK-esque because it's supposed to. No issues whatsoever as far as switching out different types of furniture. Matter of fact, what's kind of neat about it is that you can change out stuff like stocks because of the tang screw and whatnot. Pretty easily. The particular configuration that this guy has is the most compatible with aftermarket stuff, so that's fantastic. The standard grip that came with this is a standard AKM style grip. I replaced that with a US Palm because you just should. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go over the trigger here. Now, for some reason or another, people really do have a problem with Arsenal triggers, essentially, out the box, and a lot of people have a lot of problems with those. Now, personally, I don't really have a problem with these types of triggers because I've messed with military weight triggers before, and I understand it's a love it or hate it type thing, but it does have some mil weight to it. But once you start to take the slack out, it has a really, really, really obnoxious two-stage feeling to it. So you can actually feel it to where I'm starting to apply some pressure, and then that is essentially your first stage. And then from there, you have a standard mil weight type press. But the press itself, to me, anyway, and this is just from what I've used in the past, is very clean, at least, to where once it's here, there ain't hardly any over travel whatsoever, and then it just breaks, which to me makes it easier to hit stuff pretty far away. Okay, so I personally don't have a problem with this. I understand it if other guys do have a problem with it, and if that indeed is the case, there are certainly alternatives for you out there. The most widely known being, the AKT from ALG Defense and all that stuff. which the ALG trigger is really nice. So I wouldn't blame you if you changed it out. Now here's the thing, something else to note. The action on this guy is very, very smooth. Post 3,000 rounds later, it's much smoother. And it kind of caught me by surprise when I first started using it because I'm used to a little bit of rattliness in there. Mostly because, especially if you're on a new gun or something like that, you'll feel the bolt and carrier group kind of traveling over the hammer, and it's got like this rolly feeling to it. The first couple of times that I loaded up new magazines on this, and we're talking like inside 500 rounds, like I'm doing a bunch of shooting and I went to reload it, it almost felt like I broke it because it really was smooth and I could hardly feel the hammer in the trigger at all when I was charging new rounds into battery and all that other stuff. So it was kind of weird how smooth the action was and everything else, but it was a pleasant surprise rather than a nasty one, so I'll take that any day of the week. Now, further than that, we're going to go ahead and go to the rear here. As we look at the stock here honestly is another quote-unquote con that I have on this particular gun. And it's not too much against it. It's just a design principle that you either have to deal with or replace. The stock here is super hollow and super light. Now, the way that translates to a con is that the front end of the gun is heavier than normal, and AKs are nose-heavy guns, so you can see how that translates. This guy's about a pound heavier than a standard AKM, which generally rates just over 7 pounds. So when you're looking at basically an 8-pound gun to start and then about 2 pounds worth of steel magazine and ammunition, you can see how this guy can start to get heavy before we add things to it. And then let's go ahead and say that I added a T1 and a flashlight up here with an Ultimac and all the weight's up here. You know what I mean? Even if I went to RS regulate mount and threw a T1 up here and figured out a light situation over here, you're still looking pretty close to about a 10-pound gun at this point, or just over it, depending. And most of it's nose heavy because there's no real counterbalance on the other end. Now, this is something that you could pretty easily remedy because you can go to places like Rifle Dynamics and get their stock adapter and all that jazz to where you can fix yourself up with a heavier weighted stock, really, to kind of solve the balance issue. I understand a lot of guys are shaving grams and stuff off of their gun, but honestly, I'll take more weight in the rear and have a heavier overall gun if I'm balanced, personally. Now, something to note before I go too far, this guy comes with a cleaning rod, but there's no way to affix it. I understand why a lot of guys will want to keep their cleaning rods in because they'll keep them in. They'll zero the guns with the cleaning rod in the gun, and then they'll keep them there so that they don't have to worry about barrel harmonics and whip issues if they end up putting their barrel on the cover because it's not their barrel, it's their cleaning rod. Okay, totally get it. But there isn't really a way to affix it. So you're out of luck on that. So if you find that a big deal, that's something that you want to consider. I personally don't. I generally throw the cleaning rods out of guns that I have anyway. But with that being said, there's one more kind of cool thing, and it comes with pretty much every Arsenal gun with a fixed stock or not. And that is this guy right here. Now, this little cleaning kit isn't just a cleaning kit, and I really do dig this. It comes with a bunch of cool stuff that actually really helps you. The first and foremost is a front sight adjustment tool, and I'll show you a little bit more about how this works here in a second. You know, you have your brush, you know, your attachment for a freaking cotton swab or whatever, and then a small pin. So that all works, and that's all good to go, right? But where this really stands out for me personally, and what I use more than anything else, is this. This guy is hugely important because I can use this to adjust my front sight post, and if it's tight, and a lot of brand new guns out of Russian factories really are tight, like the front sight posts are really difficult to move, especially on the windage drums for some reason. But you can actually use this guy and turn your front sight post for your elevation adjustment. And what's really neat about that, and what kind of sucks about these kits, is that you don't really have any way to adjust for windage on that front sight post, but that doesn't matter because you have an RPK style rear that you can adjust for windage. So that's good to go for me personally. Now, quick thing to note is that when you're putting all your stuff back together in your little kit and you're putting it back in your stock, there's something that you kind of want to be aware of, especially for guys that are new at this kind of game. And that is when you're putting this guy back into the stock, and of course, I can't get this right, but when you're putting this guy back in the stock, there's something you need to pay attention to. First and foremost, this end goes in your stock first. Okay, you can actually see that there's a little trap door in here. This end goes into your stock first, and you only really want to push it in until the trap door, because the trap door is on the spring, is under spring tension. When you push this guy through that trap door, you only want to push it in until the door starts to close, and then get your finger out of the way. If you push in too far, it kind of fails to push itself back out again, and it's kind of a huge pain in the ass to get undone. So, you know, just be aware of that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take this guy apart. Alright, so as you can see, I had to take a minute to clean this guy up. I just had it out for a shoot fairly recently, and this would be the second time in a row that I forgot to clean up an AK before a review, but whatever. Now, here it is, guys. We had about 3,000 rounds go through this gun, and realistically speaking, especially on a gun like this, that's basically a short RPK, 3,000 rounds isn't jack or shit. Realistically speaking, I'm showing you guys wear pattern as a formality. These things handle wear like champions, you know. So, as you can see, all there is just polishing going on. This guy's 100% good to go in every facet. There's still a bunch of crud in there, but honestly, I took about 30 seconds to wipe this down a little bit. Now, no big changes or anything like that as far as the parts are concerned. So, I mean, really, it is what it is, really. But, you know, just because it is essentially a short RPK doesn't really mean that it's any different than a regular AKM as far as assembly and disassembly. I will say this, the top covers in them originally, like when the guns are new, they're kind of tight. You know, not enough to be a hassle or anything, but it's enough to catch you by surprise a little bit. Now, price point on these guns hovers right around $1,000. Okay, and when you consider options that are currently out right now, like, for instance, whoops, almost took out my camera. And when you consider other options that are currently available right now, like, for instance, you have the C39 V2s and RAS 47s, which are around $700 a piece, and they consistently eat their insides apart at around the same round count that this guy's at. Or if you're looking at the DDI guys, where unfortunately they're 100%... their 100% stamp guns have been failing, and their milled guns seem to do well, and their build kits and stuff like that are also kind of doing well, but I'm also starting to hear about issues here and there about them, and they're a little bit more expensive now than the C39s and stuff like that from Century. So as it stands in the new year of 2017, we're looking at a rifle that's right around $1,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. That's a short RPK that is going to handle literally everything that you could possibly throw at it, is more accurate and more stout than a standard AKM, and it comes straight out of a Russian factory. What's not to like, really? So, if we're in the market for an AK to start, being real here, Arsenal's always done really good stuff, But if you can handle with a little more nose weight, I would definitely pick this guy up. If we're looking at like a first rifle that you can just grab off a shelf and do good with, yeah, this would be it. The typical thing that I would look at really is be mindful of the trigger and stuff. If it's your thing, I get it, because I personally really like it. If it's not, I totally understand. The AKT isn't that expensive. And the sighting system for it, the iron sight system, is much finer than a standard AKM, so they're just easier to use. Okay. Oh, and additionally, what's kind of neat about this as well is that because it's 100% out the factory Russian gun, and because it's not like a parts kit that was just kind of slapped together and whatnot, these sliders are actually accurate. So if you take this particular AK out and you go ahead and zero it at 110 yards or 100 meters, and zero it the way that the Russians were teaching their guys to zero, you can actually use the sliders really effectively. These guns specifically, like 7.62x39 guns, start getting really squirrely after 500 yards, so be conscious of that. But all of that being said, if you have any questions or anything like that, go ahead and drop them in the comments box below. By the way, I recently did a video about the SIG Academy and cold weather carbine, and a lot of you guys were asking me about my buddy Aaron and when he was going to start his own thing, because I had replied to a few of you saying, hey, he's going to start his own thing and blah, blah, blah. He just did, and I'll drop a link in the description below. His channel name is Northeast Freedom. And he just put out a review on the SIG MCX, which is a review that I have not done yet, and you guys have asked me about it. So if me and him share actually pretty similar opinions on that rifle, so before I end up doing a review on it, if you want his word on it, and I would take his word on a lot because he's been some places, done some things, and he's taken a lot of training, I would go ahead and check him out. Again, link will be in the description below. But remember, guys, this rifle's good to go. I would definitely pick it up, especially if you're an AK guy. And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.